Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Megan, and today I'm going to be discussing the next book I read this year. It's called The Last Love Note, so let's get into it. I really enjoyed this book. It is mostly about grief and this girl slowly getting over the death of her husband. She's in her late 30s, early 40s for majority of the book. And there is a romance in it, definitely a slow burn. But the journey that she has throughout the book, I thought was really great. I think it's very well written, especially the professions of the main characters. So you have Kate, who's the main character, and she is in fundraising at a university, which is where her husband works. He is an English professor. They met in college at like 19 and fell in love, ended up getting married, had a child later on because they struggled to get pregnant. And so you have Kate and him, and then you have Hugh, who is Kate's boss. He's like the head of the department, very diligent, great worker. And the conversations that, not to say they all have with each other, but is really shown in the book, is with great maturity, and it really shows what conversations between adults should be. And it's so refreshing to read the intelligence between characters, which I feel like you rarely get anymore, even in books or in TV or movies. I generally love that. It's been a while, I think, since I read a book of this maturity between characters, and it's so refreshing. And that is kind of what made the book for me, are those conversations, the way that they like initiate or interact with other people in their lives. And so if you're kind of looking for something like that, I would say definitely check out this book. There were some really cute, I would guess, like romantic scenes, I guess. They're not necessarily like physically romantic, but it definitely had some good descriptive scenes between characters, like physically, or how their presence is, how they were in the room. One of mine was when Kate came home from, I think it was her interview, and her husband Cam was on the floor playing with their son Charlie, who was, I think, a little over a year old. And she comes home, and because she ends up like throwing up in the bathroom, and she may be pregnant. And so she just lays down and cuddles with her husband, and then Charlie just comes over and joins the pile. And the way that was really written, and the love that Kate and Cam have for each other, is just so adorable and so cute. Like, she adores her husband, and her husband loves her very much. They have this like collegiate love, and it is just so stinking cute. It's so stinking cute. And then you learn that Cam has very, very early onset Alzheimer's, which I don't even think happens in your mid to late 30s. And so that is kind of how he dies, is that he progressively can't remember certain things, and then he eventually ends up dying, which you learn through flashbacks in the book, as well as, you know, the very beginning, because there are flashbacks to help you understand their story. And he would write these like notes on, like, you know, that's the best part about like maybe having an English professor, or someone who writes for a living, is that, or that you're married to, is that they do this like creative thing with like notes or like poems or like writing and things like that. And I just thought it was just so adorable. It's just so adorable. And then with Hugh being her boss, Hugh and Cam became friends during one of the like work socials or picnics or whatever. So they became kind of close, and Hugh is just like very closed off. He doesn't share any of his personal life at work, so Kate like never knows if she's like ever doing a good job. And then they have like a very, I would say, like civil, she relies on Hugh a lot because he like steps up and is there for her, but there isn't necessarily anything romantic between them until they actually go on this like business trip, and there's a storm, so they end up staying in this Airbnb that her mom and her best friend end up providing for them. Essentially, they like booked it all, And so they're like staying here, and so they have to come. It's just basically like a healing journey, I guess. And you learn that like Hugh like loves her, and like Cam knows that. And so everyone's just like trying to get them to go together because they feel like they would be a great fit. And it's been, I think, 4 years, yeah, because Charlie's 5. So it's been like 4 years since he was diagnosed, and I think like 2 years since he had passed. And so everyone is just saying, like, you should move on. And he was like, you could just do it at your own pace. Like, the advice that he gives her and, like, the anchor that he is for her is just, like, tremendous. It's like everyone should, like, want a Hugh in their life because that is what you kind of want. I feel like they're yin and yang, too. Like, they're very different. And she, you know, is the talkative one. And she's an open book. And she's, like, emotional. Like, she's such a strong character. And I feel like she is a catch because she is just so intelligent. I wish we got more of how she works, because with the conversations that she has with Hugh are just so good. So well written, so good. I think part of it is because they work together in the same industry, and they use this like 3-day vacation, I guess, because they're kind of stuck there, as a time of like reflection and growth. And it's so cute. It is so cute. Like, I love her and Cam. I love the relationship they had, but I also kind of like the hopeful of the future for both of them because they both experience losses. One of my other favorite scenes is the scene in the staircase on the stairs. We'll just say on the stairs. That scene is so good and so descriptive because the book is in her point of view. So every time it says I, it's her speaking. So she's kind of like telling you the story of this, which is kind of funny because she's an aspiring writer. And so her husband Cam was always, I would say, encouraging her to find her voice, except she's like constantly scared and doesn't really know where she fits in terms of that. And so Cam always said, like, you need to find your footing, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. So he was supportive in a different way than maybe like Hugh is. It's about taking like the leap of faith and what are you going to do? I never expected to be a widow at her age, super young. So she thinks everything is like crashing down when she probably at least has double her age to still live. Anyways, there is a scene on the staircase that I absolutely love, and the way she describes Hugh like moving towards her, or him leaning on the wall and eye contact, because he has like these really blue eyes, whereas like Cam had the blonde hair, and they're both like handsome in their own right. And so she is like, don't want to compare them, but she's like, I'm not used to someone like Hugh who he like thinks before he speaks, and it's like very profound, and he doesn't really cross a boundary. And so, which is kind of good for her in this sense, because she, I think, needs that in this very moment in time. But that whole entire scene was just so good. And then her going down on the stairs and then turning and looking and seeing her reflection in the mirror, like her breaking down crying and then falling asleep, and then like him waking her, like, oh, that scene was just so good. There were a few good scenes that were like that. The one I mentioned before with her, Cam, and Charlie, and that were just really well written in the book. And all I could think about was, this would be cool as a movie. This would be so great as a movie, because there were a lot of movie moments like that. Like, it just felt so real. And then I learned afterwards that the author wrote this book inspired by the death of her husband. And I was like, I see now how real this does feel, and it makes you feel. And I kind of wanted to jump into the book, honestly, to see like the gorgeous places that was described and the things that they did. And I knew at the end that they were going to have a daughter together, her and Hugh. I just knew it. And then named her Cameron Genevieve after the two people that they lost. I just had a feeling that they may have a daughter. The only negative I would say in this book is that I feel like it should have ended sooner. I think it was like 365 pages or 364. I feel like by the time I got to the 300 mark, I think everything in the last 64 pages could have been at least dropped down to like maybe 330 pages. I feel like anything sometimes over 350 is a little bit too much. So I would say that's the only negative, is I feel like the very last part of the book dragged on a little bit, and it just kept, kept going back and forth. But I think that was also due to Kate, the character. Like, she's a little, I don't want to say a little all over the place, but she feels a lot of things, and with the things that she's going through. So sometimes things just don't go her way. And so I think that's probably why it went back and forth a few times until they actually reunited at the end. So I would say that's just the only positive, is the only negative is that I wish the book was shorter. At least by like maybe 30 to 50 pages. I think that's all my thoughts on The Last Love Note. Oh, I know what I was going to say. It did take me a while to figure out what The Last Love Note meant, because it was never really brought up until the very end, when she goes to, I think, Norway. She goes to Norway, and she feels in her husband's winter jacket that she ends up taking were these like sticky notes that were kind of like separated. They weren't together, and she figured out the puzzle. And I was just like, oh, okay. So that was kind of like the end of everything, because she started taking all the sticky notes that Cam had written, because he kept forgetting things. So he would always write them down. And this was like the last one. And it said, Hugh loves Kate. And Cam knew it, because he said in one of the flashbacks when they would hang out, and he says to Kate, he's like, yeah, he's like, I think Hugh really likes you. He's like, if you were married, he's like, he would definitely pursue you. He would definitely want to marry you. And so because his Alzheimer's was starting around that time when him and Hugh were hanging out, she was just like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, just thinking that he was just like randomly talking. But then she saw it in The Last Love Note. And so it kind of, I think, helped justify maybe her feelings, or justifying going for it, because she, I think, realized in that moment that she needed to go back and to see Hugh and to be all in. And I think that's really great. And then the only other thing too is that Charlie, I think he's like 10 at the end of the book, is that he wants Hugh to like formally adopt him. He's like, I think Dad would want that, knowing that Hugh could take care of Kate. And so I don't know if I like that part, because I feel like Charlie wouldn't do that. I feel like Charlie would want to honor his father in keeping his name. So I was just like, oh man. But maybe, like he said, he's like, Dad probably would have wanted this. And so I guess you just kind of have to like live with that. Because even Kate said, she's like, every single day he's just like his dad with writing and with the things that he's interested in and his personality. So I think his heart will still be running around with Charlie. And so maybe that is more important than some legality. That's it for my review on The Last Love Note. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.